I want to welcome everybody to week 2. It's a very short first week, I know, with this 5.5 week format. But we move right along into week 2. So I want to recap, of course, a few things from week 1. We did have our live lecture on Thursday morning, which actually I'm recording this early. So hopefully I can address most of your questions. But in kind of recapping it, if you are just watching the announcements, please note that discussion posts need to include feedback posts your classmates' names. I'm not particularly picky about if you use first and last name, just first name, and you want to be all politically correct and use last name, that's fine. But you do and are required to do that after week 1. So I'm lenient the first week. By week 2, we got to get this down because it's a very short term. Keep in mind of the 60-40 rule. 60% of your discussion post grade is based on your initial post and 40 on your feedback post. And then of course they do close Saturday, and you will need to make sure you have everything in by then, because you will not have access to those discussion posts after that, as it is part of your attendance. Writing assignments are always going to be due on Sunday. Please make sure it's an APA template, that you can go to the library resources tab and download the APA template. And then of course, those I will take late up until the very next Sunday. So you basically have 7 days to turn in your assignment if something were to go awry and happen. However, there is a 10% per day deduction in your where you start for grading purposes. So you want to make sure you adhere to those deadlines and get everything in. So you did have a written assignment on career choices and an application assignment on supply and demand. We had the live lecture, which was on Thursday morning. And you need to make sure you post your attendance before that Sunday midnight. And then of course the discussion posts. Phew, that was week 1, right? All right, so now we're moving into week 2, and this is all going to be about ethics, motivation, teamwork, and leadership. So you do have a lot of things to do in week 2. You have a lot of things to cover, online lectures as well as reading material, some activities. You also have a written assignment, an application assignment, a discussion post, and of course the live lecture attendance, which is pretty much going to be the standard going forward in the next few weeks. So the objectives for this week is to define what ethics is, discuss personal ethics, how they are developed, and how ethical life can get you ahead. Illustrate how a company in a community might develop an ethical environment, recognize different leadership styles, and you want to identify the use of web-based tools for virtual teams, which is very similar to what we're doing right here. And then, of course, explain the differences between what a leader is and what a manager is. So just kind of real quickly, in looking at what ethics is, and I'm not going to do this as a lecture, I'm just doing this really quickly. There's a lot of things that go into what ethics can be. So looking at what business ethics can be, we have to look at things like corporate responsibility, corporate greed, but then we also have to look at our stakeholders. These are the people that have some sort of claim to the organization, not necessarily an owner, but they do either, they're the customers, the employees, the suppliers, the managers, the community, the overall environment. So we need to look at those influences on the company. And then we have those moral behaviors, what is right, what is wrong. And we'll go into this a lot further for the lab lecture. But trade agreements, how are we making trade agreements with suppliers, other companies, regimes in other countries, humanitarian issues in other countries. If we were a global company, I know a lot of companies will go and set up agreements where they'll come in and they'll build a factory, but in order for them to build a factory, they have to build the roads and supply electricity and water. And they kind of build up the community around where they're looking to build that factory. There's a lot of things. And then there's social environment audit. So how much is this going to cost us to do this? What are the benefits if we go to another country versus staying here? How will that impact our image and reputation with our shareholders, mainly i.e. our customers and employees? So there's a lot of things that go into, what actually business ethics is. And we'll get into that a little bit further. So kind of in thinking about all of that, you've got your written assignment for this week. And it's about my favorite company, Starbucks. But basically, corporate and social responsibility. Does it matter outside of the United States? So you're going to read this information about Starbucks workers plan to strike in Chile. It's kind of a little an older article, but it does have some very valid points. So after you read the article, you want to outline basically the ethical conduct, the ethical issues that are facing Starbucks. From there, you need to discuss at least 3 of the employee demands, and you're going to have to infer and pull from the article because they're not just going to list them for you. And then, of course, are their demands justified? You need to tell me why or why not. Be sure to consider the following: the economic impact, employee morale, adverse publicity, both here and abroad. So it doesn't have to be just Chili's, anywhere in the world, not Chili's, but Chile. And of course, customer reaction here in the United States. And then, of course, one of the things I always look for is, does it matter to you? So I want to hear your opinion. Does it matter to you? Yes, no, explain why. Make sure you have correct spelling, grammar, punctuation. Oops, gotta take my little arrow off. And then, of course, the rubrics, kind of breaking everything down. You can see that you've outlined it, you've described the impact on Starbucks, you've discussed the conflict and impact in the company, and then, of course, you use correct spelling, grammar, punctuation. So looking at tools for virtual teams, this is basically your application assignment for this week. I just basically need you to brainstorm, come up with ideas, and go out and search the internet for some tools. Come back and explain what those tools were. You're going to look for software and hardware. A lot of people tend to pick up iPads for that, or any type of iPhones. We've got so much hardware. And then software, things like Adobe Connect that we use. Answer the following questions and make sure you use correct spelling, grammar, and punctuation. And then, of course, the rubrics, that you've gone out and you've researched that information and you've described the whole virtual team collaboration with your hardware and software. And then, of course, you use correct spelling, grammar, and punctuation. And then, of course, your discussion post for this week is on corporate social responsibility. Is it just for companies? So kind of give me a little information about CSR. Think about your personal code of ethics, how it might clash with some of those companies, and then have you experienced an ethical dilemma? Has it tested your personal ethics? So you get a little free reign here in the discussion post. I'd like to hear some of your experiences with this, as well as some ethical dilemmas. You don't have to be very personal if you don't want to. Remember, everybody's reading these. And then how might you resolve these differences? And then, of course, the live classroom is going to be on Mondays. And of course, you get 5 points, so it is mandatory whether you attend or watch it. And then, of course, it's going to be Mondays from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 to 6 Central Time. So we'll make sure you're watching these announcements each week. I will offer extra credit probably around the end of the term, just to kind of cover everything from there moving forward. But I'm only going to make that announcement in the announcement, so you do need to make sure you watch them. If you do have any comments, questions, or concerns, emailing me is the easiest way to get a hold of me, as I am a virtual professor. Otherwise, we can set up a time to meet by phone or in my Adobe Connect room. So I hope everybody is having a great first half week and into week 2, and I will see you guys in the live lecture and again for week 3. Thanks. Bye.